Hi, my name is Gwen Smith. I'm the editor of Allergic Living, and my guest today is Tamara Hubbard, a licensed therapist based in Illinois. And she's the author of a new book called May Contain Anxiety: Managing the Overwhelm of Parenting Children with Food Allergies. Welcome, Tamara. First, thank you for writing this important book.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yes, because anxiety is such a huge issue for the food allergy community. So, just a great idea to do this book.
Thank you.
Now, let's dive in. You are a licensed therapist working with food allergy parents, and you're a food allergy mom. Can you explain what drew you to this area of food allergy therapy?
Yeah, initially I avoided it, quite honestly, because I was the mom who was crying the night before kindergarten and scared, and I was full of anxiety about how to keep my child safe and to teach them to keep themselves himself safe. But then it started to make sense, and where it really flipped for me was when I was at Dr. Ruchi Gupta's first conference back years ago. And I started to ask who's taking care of the mental health and wellness of the allergy community. And at that time, there really wasn't a whole lot out there, maybe some studies being done, and that was about it. So, long story short, I started a blog on the Food Allergy Counselor website, which then led to people reaching out, which unfortunately, because of licensing laws, I can't do therapy with people outside of the states I'm licensed in. And then that led to opening up the Academy of Food Allergy Counseling, which has a therapist directory and is trying to educate more therapists on food allergy and food allergy counseling. So I wanted to create solutions and content that helped this community and myself as an allergy parent too.
I'd like to step back for a moment because through Allergic Living, we've reported on the food allergy community now for over 15 years. And I find the psychological impact of managing food allergies to be one of the most profound issues in this community. I hear from so many food allergy families through our reporting. And what do I hear more than anything? People's struggles with allergy related anxiety. And
Yeah.
Tamara, I got to say, at times it's heartbreaking. I hear of kids with food allergies who become fearful of food. They limit their diets. Some families, be well beyond their allergens. Some families greatly restrict social outings and travel, all because of that fear of accidental allergen exposures. This is challenging. As a therapist and now an author, how do you begin to tackle that with a client?
Well, I begin with compassion and understanding first and foremost, right? Because this is difficult and it is trying to figure out that balance, which is really hard. But in my work, both in the book and with clients, I am really working towards teaching them to develop two key concepts. That's psychological flexibility, which is based in acceptance and commitment therapy approach. And psychological flexibility really is looking at the ability to show up with whatever feelings show up in real time. So anxiety, grief, sadness, trauma, loss, all of that. And then still taking meaningful actions that make our life more meaningful and vibrant, which can be hard when we're afraid and we feel anxious about doing so. And then the other concept I try to teach is this concept of relaxed readiness, which is based on the Goldilocks principle, which comes from food allergy research. And that is to develop a workable level of anxiety that allows for a balance between vigilance and risk taking. And so I do that with clients by helping them reframe anxiety, understand it differently, and develop a more functional relationship with it, where it's a tool to help us stay safe rather than the compass that leads us through life. I also help them. I'm not a doctor, so I never ever step into scope of medical work that's outside of my scope. And so I will help them clarify their fears so they can go back to their allergist and allergy care team and get really important information or correct misinformation, and we use that as the basis of our work. And the work really is developing this new relationship with anxiety, learning coping strategies, and then doing things that are safe but make us feel uncomfortable for the sake of enhancing our quality of life.
You're trying to move people forward in their lives.
Trying to move them
Yeah.
forward. And I get it because I'm an allergy parent and I may get this work, but I also struggle with this too sometimes. So, yeah.
Now, your book's tagline is managing the overwhelm of parenting children with food allergies. We've just been saying that overwhelm is there and it's common. Tell us a couple of ways to recognize that you've reached a point of overwhelm and how to begin to deal with it.
One of the ways that parents and families in general can recognize that they're feeling overwhelmed by all of this is that they get this sense that the way in which they're living just isn't sustainable. It's just feeling exhausting and there's burnout and it's taxing on emotional and mental health. And so something needs to change. The way we approach allergy management, our understanding of allergy management, or how we relate and navigate our own anxiety. Another way is simply that we recognize that anxiety is leading all of our decision making. We can't ignore anxious thoughts. We can't necessarily control them either, but we don't want them in the driver's seat when we're living with food allergies because we will over avoid everything just because it feels uncomfortable and unsafe, even if it might be safe enough to do. So those are two key ways in which I help people understand that the ways in which they're living with food allergies, it's just not workable long term, and it may be causing more challenges than short term help. Short term, it's helpful, but long term, it's causing more challenges.
That's really interesting. Now, in the book, you actually identify several what you call parent traps.
Yep.
Let's talk about the overfunctioning trap. Can you explain what that is? I found that part really interesting.
Yeah, so I'll back up a second just to say that allergy parenting traps is a term that I created to describe exactly what I was just saying, short-term behaviors that feel useful but may cause long-term challenges. And so the over functioning trap, I think is the one you were saying first,
Yeah.
is an allergy typically in families, and I don't want to be stereotypical, but it's oftentimes the mom, sometimes the dad, who becomes the allergy expert parent by way of the fact that they're the ones that go to the allergy appointments and they're the ones seeking the knowledge of how to live with this food allergy and adjust to it. And so inadvertently, because we're the parent, and I was this parent in my own family,
Mhm.
when we become that parent, either by way of putting ourselves there to control the anxiety we're feeling, or people put us in that place because we're the one with all the knowledge, we can create a relationship with anxiety that's unhelpful, where we think that we need to do everything and control everything in order to keep our child safe. And that then leads to things like burnout and strain on marital relationships and family relationships. And our child and others never learn how to develop their allergy management skills themselves, which then plays into our ability to trust other people to care for that child so we can take a step back and breathe too.
So it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling circle, doesn't it? Because if you're doing everything, then
Yeah.
the child isn't getting it, and then the other people who could be helpful, you
Yeah.
haven't taken the time to really explain to them. I that's
Yeah, and the only way to build allergy management confidence is through building competence, which is being able to do things well. And the only way we do that is by practicing. And usually it's practicing things that are making us feel uncomfortable, that our anxious mind might tell us are unsafe or not safe enough. But in reality, they can be made safe enough and they give us tons of benefits, like being able to rely on other people and learn how to trust other people, including the child themselves, to manage the food allergy.
okay. Now, what about this other trap you mentioned, the over avoidance trap?
Yeah.
I think I know what you mean here because in social media, I see all the time we'll put up like a Q&A with an expert saying something like, where somebody asks a question, my child has peanut and soy allergies. Do I need to avoid other legumes? And the expert will go into explaining that likely not for these and these reasons, but it does happen X percentage of the time, and it's usually a pretty low percentage. That's just in the case of the all legumes question.
Yeah.
But there are people who just say, no, that feels too risky to me. So I'm just, we're not having those. But, nutrition at a certain point becomes an issue and so forth.
Yeah.
So, can you just, that's my own experience, noticing the over avoidance trap among our community. But what are you getting at when you raise it?
So what I'm talking about is, and I never push families to do things that just don't make sense to them for their family. But exactly what you said, over avoidance. Yes, we need to avoid our allergens in order to stay safe. But what that looks like and how we do that on a day-to-day basis, we may need to adjust. On top of that, we tend to avoid experiences that make us feel anxious and uncomfortable because the mind seeks safety in familiarity and predictability and certainty. And so my goal in bringing this trap in is to help us make sure that if we're choosing to avoid an experience or something in our lives, it's because we're choosing to based on medical necessity, because we're choosing to based on it's something we don't really care about or want to do, and that we're not choosing to avoid it based on the anxiety and trying to get rid of the anxiety and reassure ourselves by avoiding everything that feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, avoidance does seem easy at a certain point,
Yeah.
but you miss out on so much.
Yeah. Well,
I've mentioned before in my own writing that when people get too trapped in anxiety, it's almost like life starts shrinking.
yeah.
You don't, nobody wants their child to be the one who misses out on all sorts of great experiences. And I've seen families be so proud of things like, my daughter's on the soccer team. Never thought she could do it. We were so worried, and now she's great, and she just scored a goal. And that's for the younger ones, and then other ones where their kids are starting to do travel for college, and it's wonderful. It's like the kid gets to expand their wings, and the parents get to kind of learn, we can actually do this. So
Yeah.
when people, I'm always worried that people will think if that's where they are and they're listening, that we're criticizing. We're not criticizing.
No.
It's
No.
just, it's about there's support here, and you can, and just, pick up Tamara's book, and you'll, for starters, if you're new to this, read some of
Yeah.
our coverage on allergic living. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, it can make such a difference. And again, I can't go on about what a huge topic it is for
Yeah.
our community. And if a message I would have for anybody listening is, if you think you're alone dealing with this, you are certainly not, right, Tamara? Like, you make a
100% not
living doing
alone.
this. So,
No, yes, yes, you are so not alone. It's the
yeah,
opposite. You're so not alone. Yeah, something I'll say just kind of to wrap up that little bit that you said, which is so important, is that the goal of the work I do or any of us therapists do, and the goal of my book is to help families examine the ways in which they're living with food allergies and figure out how to apply the guidelines, the allergy management guidelines to their lives in a way that they can still live full and safe lives, rather than trying to shrink, like you said, to fit into the food allergy management guidelines and then lose out on opportunities for joy, growth, seeing our kids grow, child development, all of the wonderful things. It's about how can we do it safely, not we can't do it safely ever.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the famous what ifs
We
with food allergies.
love these thoughts. We hate
Oh
them.
boy, they come
Yeah.
up so much. What if I
Yes.
let my daughter go to the birthday party and she's given the wrong dessert and has a reaction? What if he has a reaction on the school field trip? I just won't let him go. The trouble is, again, we this isn't a great way to live, and your child is going to want to take part in these things.
Mhm.
So just further, it kind of furthers on some of the other points we were making, but what do you suggest about the what ifs? How do you turn them from being just a negative into something that's more useful?
Yeah, it's exactly what you said, right? So, what if thoughts are those worried thoughts, future focused, awfulizing everything, worst case scenario outcomes? We can easily get stuck in that. I use the analogy of a snow globe that we shake it up and all the thoughts are just going, and we just need them to settle a little. And one way to help our minds do that is by turning a what if thought to an if then thought. That takes it from this passive rumination, worry thought to an action based thought. So that might look like in the scenario of the birthday party, saying, okay, I noticed that I'm having, and I use that language, I noticed that I'm having that thought that I'm wondering, what if my daughter, has the wrong birthday cake or has an allergic reaction at this birthday party? Well, I would switch that around to saying, well, if that happens, then we will use our action plan and we will promptly use epinephrine and address the reaction, right? Rather than saying, I'm going to lean into that certainty trap or that over avoidance trap and say she can't go, and now I'm impacting her social and emotional health, right? It's how can we do it safely? If that happens, then we'll do X. Similarly, if it's a kid, going on a field trip at school, because those happen all the time, if we notice that we're saying, well, what if they're on a school trip and what if the teachers aren't prepared enough? What if they don't know what to do or how to address an allergic reaction? Well, then we can say, if I'm thinking that and wondering that, then I can reach out to the teacher and just make that point of connections just to confirm that they have what they need, they understand the emergency action plan, and they know how to address it promptly, right? So rather than spinning, we're acting.
It's funny too, once they've done it once, they've usually kind of got the drill and now
Yeah.
they know what to go ask and
But
it's pretty amazing
that's
to
the
see.
that's the gift of not over avoiding things that we're just anxious about, but that we can do safely or we can figure out how to do safely, is we learn and we skill build. We learn how to influence outcomes rather than try to control everything. We learn how to get through tough, challenging situations and see ourselves and our children grow, and it feels good. And so if we don't do those hard things that we can do safely and figure out how to do it safely, we rob ourselves of those opportunities, and it can impact our child's growth and development eventually.
Yeah. You also raised a point about teens in the book. You mentioned in the allergy management in the teen years, you talk about teens who start to coast when it comes to allergies,
Yep.
especially if they haven't had a reaction in years. So, how can a parent stay on top of that and get the teen back on track?
Yeah, that's a big point I want to make. And again, I'm going to highlight that I'm the parent of a 16 and 18-year-old. So
There you go.
hello, living this right now.
Welcome to her world.
Thank you. Yeah. So, but yes, we often do heavy education at time of diagnosis and those younger years when they're transitioning to school. And then we kind of often forget that we need to keep up with that. Again, the goal is to help our kids scaffold and build their skills, and for us to build our skills and to back off over time as they hopefully take over more responsibility of managing the food allergy. And so we all know teens are spicy and fun, or can be spicy and fun. And so they don't like lecturing or being talked at or talked to. So my tips for parents of kids that are teens is to do as much listening, if not more, than talking. Number one, meet them where they're at. Ask them exploratory questions. How does it feel to manage your food allergy and do that in a social situation? What would you do in this scenario? Raise scenario-based questions, right? Share your thoughts, share it from a place of, well, this is what I read, this is evidence, versus it's just that I'm telling you to do this. We may be more anxious as parents in this space because they're pulling away and we're like, we're afraid, right? But we need to come from a place of calm and level-headedness rather than lecturing out of a place of fear and anxiety. And then finally, I'd say it's always useful. I'm pulling from my working with teen years of saying things like, hey, you want me off your back. I want to pull back more and give you more independence, but that looks like you showing more responsibility in managing your food allergy. And I need to see that so that I can build trust in your ability to manage it safely, and I can pull back and you can trust that I will pull back. So it's a two-way street. Let's annoy each other less. Let's build these skills. Let's work together and let's do that. And I won't lecture you during this.
So, Tamara, I think you've covered an awful lot of ground here, and I really appreciate it. And I highly recommend your book. So, first, thank you so much for being here with me today to discuss this.
Yep.
For people watching us, the book is called May Contain Anxiety, and it's available widely at bookstores and online. Thanks again, Tamara.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.